It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. I have a lot to unpack today, so let's just get right into it. First thing I'll just say is obviously extremely frustrated from a financial responsibility standpoint of our current representatives by extending the government expenses through February, and of course something like 69 senators voted for it. So, we're in incredible debt, spending too much money, in my opinion, far too much money, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. Another temporary spending measure. Nothing really got accomplished. They just kicked the can down the road till February. And what's so frustrating about it, all 50 Democrats, of course, voted for it. The senators, I think just about every Democratic legislator voted for it in the House. But what's so frustrating about this whole thing really comes down to is I think 69 senators voted for it, and only like 28 or 29 didn't. And like I've been saying in some of these other, some of these other spending bills and such, we've seen similar situations where only about a third, about 30 of the senators actually voted against spending more money. And it's those we have too much of a minority in terms of financial responsibility in terms of our legislators, our representatives. Again, I've said this many times. I'll say it again, and I'll keep beating this drum, I guess, until the American people realize that financial responsibility of government is a hugely important factor if we want to avoid serious economic challenges and pain down the road. Okay, we're going to get into more of that. Let me unpack some of these other things quickly because they're shorter and easier to cover, and I'm going to get back into that very issue again. One of the most recent ones that just came about is where Biden's going to be announcing that health insurers must cover 100% of cost of at-home COVID tests. So in other words, he's going to force private insurance companies to pay for COVID tests, at-home COVID tests, for people. Now, again, I've got a problem with it from a legal constitutional standpoint. I also have a problem with it from a financial standpoint. Let me touch on the financial one first because that's probably a little easier. I'm in the insurance business. I'm an insurance agent. I've been for over 22 years. If you force insurance companies to pay for something, who's going to actually pay for it? The insurance companies or the consumers? Anybody who pays for insurance is going to pay for this, whether you take a COVID test or not, whether you apply this or not. We're all going to pay more for our insurance. I don't know how much. It may not be significant, but it's still, we're going to pay more. It's flat, plain and simple. I want you to understand that. Secondly, my issue is, where does he get the idea? Where in the world does our administration get the idea that they have the right to force private companies to pay for things? We know they've been doing this already. I mean, here's what's interesting: the vaccine mandate has been getting shot down across the country by courts, multiple courts. Thankfully, so as an old government overreach, as unconstitutional, and all these kinds of things. And of course, this is going to go down the pike, and hopefully, it'll become permanent. But yet, they just keep going down the path. They don't really care, and it's another overreach. Why do these people? This is what's so amazing to me. Why do these people think they have any right to tell us how to live our lives and tell independent companies what they must do? I thought this was a free country. You know what I'm trying to say? Obviously, they don't adhere to the same set of rules or believe in the same set of rules. They don't believe in the Constitution. They trample it at every opportunity, every step of the way. But understand, we're just going to pay more, okay? And here's just another Another thing, it might not be a major thing, but it's just one more thing. It's one more thing. Understand where the Democrats, the leftists, stand in terms of our rights, our freedoms, what they think about, the role of government and all that. If you're in favor, I'm just going to say this: if you're in favor of a big government basically being in control of everything, keep voting Democrat. If you're not, don't. Okay. It's gone far beyond now between like Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal or, any of those kind of labels. We got to get away from that, folks. We got to start focusing on what it is the people we're voting in, our representatives. What are they going to do? What is their view of government? And does it match the role of government in our lives? And does it match our belief system, our views? And if it doesn't, you need to vote for the candidate who doesn't want to have government basically be involved in every aspect of our lives, including forcing our health insurance companies to pay for at-home COVID tests, which, of course, they're not going to pay for. The insurance companies aren't going to pay for it. You and I, the consumers, will in higher premiums. We're going to pay for it, folks. Okay? It's just that simple. Moving on to the next one. Biden also says that it's the moral responsibility of the United States to vaccinate vaccinate the world. I don't know where he got that idea from either. Okay, I don't think it's our responsibility to vaccinate the world. If it's in our interest, okay. But if we're about, do you realize? Again, there's a financial issue here. There's a legal issue, a constitutional issue. Again, we'll focus on the financial one. He goes on and has the audacity to even say in this that it won't cost the Americans anything, the taxpayer, to vaccinate the world. Biden, do you understand that the government has no money? Folks, do you understand our government has no money, period? Where do they get money from? Taxes and selling bonds, printing it, basically. And we're all seeing the effects of our government, Federal Reserve, through the Federal Reserve primarily, of printing more money. It's called inflation. Look at the gas pump lately. That's one of the things. Look at food prices. By the way, folks in the East are already starting to see Pennsylvania 50% increases of fuel bills this winter. Geez, I wonder how they feel about the how should I say? I'm drawing a blank here. It's unbelievable. That's pretty rare for me. It's just like it's escaped me. I'm usually like on a roll. I guess I'm so frustrated right now. I'm so irritated by these elites who have it in their head that they know what's right for us, but their rules. They don't have to live by the rules they put in place, but we should. The audacity, just the egos. The sheer, I can't even come up with a word. I'm speechless. I'm so frustrated. I'm almost speechless, and that takes a lot. Those of you who have been listening for a while, And like I said, it's this kind of thing where they have the audacity to say, "Hey, we're going to vaccinate the world." By the way, they're giving the vaccines to around the world for free. They recently gave millions of vaccines, for example, to Afghanistan. Okay. We gave them billions of dollars of military equipment, so now we're going to give them vaccines too for free. Who benefits? This is one thing that's always interesting, and I've learned from some very successful people, always from several folks actually. Or if you want to understand something, follow the money. Well, it's pretty clear if they're going to vaccinate the world, who creates the vaccines? It's the big pharma, right? Big Pharma, think about it, billions and billions of vaccines. What's that going to do for their bottom line? And they've got a willing and ready customer, the U.S. government, to buy millions and millions, maybe probably billions of these vaccines. Pushing the boosters and all these more and more vaccines just means more money and more in the pocket of Big Pharma. And if we were to go and look at who supported many of these politicians that are in charge right now, who were some of their major donors, I wouldn't be surprised that Big Pharma has given some very generous donations, we'll put it that way, to the people who are making these decisions, right? So, again, the audacity to say it won't cost anything, of course it will, folks. Let's not be fools. Let's have a little bit of financial literacy. Let's have a little bit of financial responsibility and a little bit of common sense to understand that if the federal government, big pharma, the pharmacies are, the pharmaceutical companies are not doing it for free. Okay, they're getting paid. They're getting paid by the U.S. government's paying them. And where does the U.S. government get their money from? Again, anyone who pays taxes, which, by the way, is just about everybody. Income taxes, I get it. Roughly half the Americans only pay income taxes. But when you add up things like gas tax, sales taxes, and all these other things, now some are state, some are federal. I get all that. But pretty much anybody, all of us pay tax, folks, okay, in some form or fashion. Some of it goes to the state, some go to the feds. But like the gas tax, for example, if you drive a car and you buy gas, you're paying federal taxes. So congratulations, you're getting to pay for vaccinating the world. And guess who really benefits? Big Pharma. This other one was quite eye-opening. It was quite interesting, I thought. And it was a joke that Biden mentioned. But, a joke that, and here's the thing about jokes, before I share what it is. Jokes always have a grain of truth in them. That's what makes them a good joke, right? Well, Biden joked that Fauci is president. He sees Fauci more than the first lady. Now, he might think that's funny. I don't. That means Fauci has a tremendous amount of influence on Biden. If he's seeing him that often, and that does kind of answer a lot of questions. A lot of people have been asking, who is really in charge? It appears, this is straight from Biden, that Fauci certainly is a big part of that. So our country is being at least partially ran or influenced by, let's say, I think that's fair, by a bureaucrat who's been in office for decades, who's made error after error, mistake after mistake, has changed his admittedly lied to the American public, is probably partially responsible for the funding that created the virus in the first place. And he's kind of, partially at least, running the show and dictating policy, which really does kind of answer a lot of questions about who is in charge and who's really making decisions. Because many of these decisions and the administration has made have been wildly just lacking common sense, okay? And so that does answer a lot of things. I'm going to really encourage you to stay tuned in the next segments because we're really unpacking a lot of other stuff. We're going to talk about the economy, the Federal Reserve, and a number of things like that are in the stock market that really are going to impact people's lives. So stay tuned. Don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And, like I said, we've been talking about a number of things that have come up recently. Biden's announcing that health insurers are going to have to cover 100% of at-home COVID tests. Of course, we'll all have to pay for that. Insurance companies aren't going to. It'll be higher premiums, obviously. I'm an insurance agent 22 plus years, so I'm just telling you how it's going to be. Don't think folks, when they say stuff is free, it's not really free, okay? Let's wake up and let's grow up a little bit. Anybody that thinks otherwise, please. Biden also says we're going to vaccinate. We must vaccinate the world. The U.S. must do that, which, of course, is going to cost more money that the American citizens will pay for, even though he says they won't. But, let's face it. Where does the government get money? From taxes or printing it, right? So, again, not free. We're going to vaccinate the world. And those that benefit the most from it are going to be Big Pharma, the companies that, you're talking about billions of doses of vaccine. I don't even know what kind of profit margin that's going to be. So probably quite good, I would imagine. And then the other one where I mentioned Biden joked that Fauci is president because he sees him more often than the first lady. Biden, I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's a joke at all. In other words, it's been widely acknowledged and suspected by a lot of people that Biden isn't really fully in charge. He clearly relies on people around him a lot. Fauci seems to obviously clearly is a big part of that, which frankly does kind of answer. It makes sense. I mean, it kind of answers a lot of questions in terms of who's making many of these policy decisions. Obviously, Fauci is involved with a good amount of it from what Biden himself is saying. So, kind of gives us an idea of, we elect somebody to, based on what decision we think they're going to make, not the bureaucrats that are unelected that have been there for decades, which is a big problem. And then, of course, let's talk about a few other things. Oh, yeah, I love this one. So, if you haven't heard already, of course, Jerome Powell has been nominated for another 4-year term. And he's the one who, in my opinion, and many experts, frankly, has really caused a big part of the inflationary cycle that we have and the bubbles that we have both in the stock market and real estate markets because, they, for one, kept interest rates low far, far too long. Janet Yellen did prior to Powell, and then, of course, he continued it. They dropped the interest rates, frankly, to near zero after 0809. Okay, understandably so, because the economy took that's a whole different can of worms, but the economy took a dive, right? We won't get into the causes of that. That's for a whole nother day's discussion. But to kind of get the economy going again and all that, and it did. And they kept the interest rates low, and they kept them low, and they kept them low. And now 12, 13 years later, they're still low. And it's like historical lows. And that just, that monkeys with the system. That messes up with the economic system. And, of course, folks, why do you think real estate in most places in the country are at all-time highs? Why do you think that their stock market is all-time highs or has been in most cases? Well, I share this with a lot of people. It's amazing to me how many people are not aware of this. Now, of course, those of you that are investors and really pay close attention to this probably are aware, but it's amazing how few people know that for over a year that our Federal Reserve has been purchasing $80 billion a month in bonds, which props the stock market. Let's be real. And $40 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities, which, of course, props the real estate markets. So they started the tapering in November of 2021. And then recently, finally, and more recently, Powell was saying, even up until just a couple of weeks ago, that inflation was transitory. We've had some of the highest inflation rates. I talked about the CPI, the PPI. That's the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Indexes being some of the highest levels we've seen since they've been measuring these things, or certainly since like the 1970s, in fact. And of course, he led the charge saying, it's transitory, which means it's not going to be around it's short term. It's not going to last very long. And folks, I don't know about you, but I didn't believe him. I stated that on the radio. It was a joke. And there was a lot of people that didn't believe him, a lot of experts. And finally, Jerome Powell himself has now stated that it's not transitory. He's finally admitted it. And that inflation is going to be around at least till mid-2022. Now, why does he think mid-2022 and suddenly it's just going to disappear? Do you believe him? I don't have much faith in him. Look at his track record. Pretty much everything he's told us about inflation has been incorrect up to this point. So what makes us think it's going to be? My opinion is he's under a lot of political pressure to keep the interest rates low. When a government has debt, a lot of debt, which our government does have, low interest rates benefits the government, and of course it benefits large business because it's a cheap source of money to grow and expand and all that, right? Well, who donates to politicians and stuff primarily? Big business, right? Some of the biggest donors. So it helps. So there's a lot of pressure to keep the interest rates low, and finally there's so much inflationary pressure you can't deny it anymore. And a little bit of common sense has finally come into play. Now they're even talking about tapering the bond buying program even faster. Originally, they were going to stop it. They were going to taper it down between November 2021 and I think June of 2022, which meant they were going to buy less each month and taper it down to zero over, about 8-month period roughly. It looks like they're going to speed that up a few months. And which is good. I mean, my opinion should have been done a long time ago, far earlier than they're doing it. Of course, I would have had interest rates higher than they were to get to more normal levels, so a more normal, healthy economy much sooner, too. And why is he saying inflation is going to be around till mid-2022 and not something beyond that? Again, I just think he's under a lot of political pressure to say those things. I don't really think he believes that, frankly, if you were to sit him down personally and privately. I don't think anyone knows how long inflation is going to last. They've created this bubble, folks, by doing all this bond buying. And then, of course, the other factor comes into play is government spending. How much more government spending is there going to be? Obviously, if Build Back Better or some other spending plans, the government continues to spend more money and create more debt, that will just further push inflation, won't it? I mean, that's economics 101, folks. So Jerome Powell has no idea how long inflation is going to last because he has no idea how much more money the federal government's going to spend. In fact, none of us do. And that's an uncertainty that we don't know. And inflation is here. According to Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, it's going to be here at least through the middle of next year. Wink, wink. Probably longer. How much longer? No one knows. How do you offset that? Well, generally speaking, and with the tapering, the less bond buying and mortgage-backed security buying, the Fed is dialing down faster. How is that going to affect the stock market? How is that going to affect the real estate market? How is that going to affect inflation? Diversification, folks, some guarantees. Your personal bank will accomplish that. Interest rate sensitive assets. Contact me, toll free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com for more information. That's one of the best solutions, just so you know. Stay tuned in the next segment because I've got some stuff I'm going to discuss you're not going to want to miss in terms of fiscal responsibility of our government. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. Talking about a lot of things that are going on right now in terms of the different policies that are being put in place. And again, it revolves around a same common theme, and it's government overreach. It's the government basically wanting to become the nanny state. They're wanting to basically get involved in every aspect of our lives. Everything from like forcing insurance companies to pay for at-home COVID tests, which means we're going to pay for those and increase premiums. Now they want to vaccinate the world, which will just enrich the big pharma like never before, probably. But Jerome Powell, my beef, one of my biggest beefs also, again, it has to do with these, not only the elected representatives we put up there, but then the people they choose in the bureaucratic positions. Jerome Powell, Biden, of course, has nominated him to reappoint him for another 4-year term. And this guy's incompetence is unreal. I mean, he has finally admitted that this year's rampant inflation isn't transitory after all. And that admission, basically, it just highlights how far behind the inflationary curve he and the Fed have been. It's like they're in a bubble and they just are absolutely either clueless and they don't know what's going on in the real world, or they don't care. And there's some intention behind this. We've seen some of the highest inflation rates in 30 years. Okay. This has been going on since the numbers have been coming out since April of 2021. Economists were warning about this months in advance, months prior to that. I was doing that. I know that for sure. Okay. Like I said, this show's recorded. You can go to yourpersonalbank.com and listen to any of the previously recorded shows if you doubt me. But, and one of the number one primary purposes of the Fed is they have a twin purpose, and that's to keep inflation in check and full employment, and absolutely horrendously failed. Inflation is here. We've had it now for a better part of this year. It's been at the highest levels we've seen, in some cases, since the 1970s. I've shared some of these numbers in previous shows, from the CPI, Consumer Price Index, the Producer Price Indexes. Horrendous numbers. And it didn't take a rocket science or a brain surgeon to figure out that this was happening or going to happen. You spend this kind of money, you have the federal government printing dollars like they're going out of style. We have never seen this level of spending and printing in the history of man, okay? Of any country, of any government, ever in history. That's a fact. And so when you put all that together, you have more dollars. It's going to create inflation. Like I said, it's not rocket science. And they just couldn't seem to figure that out. And then to have the audacity to say it's transitory. Oh, that means it's not going to last very long. That's a joke. I said that before. Many people did. There was a lot of memes or a lot of jokes about it because it was so laughable. Yet some people, I guess, believed it. I suppose. I don't know who, but you're pretty gullible if you believe these bureaucrats, and the level of incompetence of the people we have in charge is sometimes beyond belief. Okay, in terms from a common sense standpoint, maybe they know what they're doing and they're doing it on purpose, and that's just worse. That's just evil, in my opinion, because they're going absolutely against what they're supposed to be put there for. But he now says that inflation is going to be around until mid 2022. They're going to accelerate the tapering, and what if you don't know what that means? The Federal Reserve, a lot of people don't know this, but the Federal Reserve for the last year and a half roughly has been buying $80 billion a month of bonds, which props the stock market. That's why we've had such a overheated stock market. And $40 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities, which is why we've had such a big reason why we've had such a high price, overheated real estate market. The Federal Reserve has created a bubble in both of those areas. And now they're trying to unwind it, and they're trying to figure out how. Do you have faith that they're going to be able to do it without screwing this up? They created the problem, folks. Okay? And how much more money is the government going to spend? In other words, Jerome Powell has no idea how long inflation is going to last because nobody knows how much more money the government's going to spend, do they? And if the government spends more money, it's just going to create more inflation. Okay? It's just that simple. So you want to offset inflation and protect yourself? Contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. But, your personal bank is an option where you can diversify, grow your money tax-free, and it's highly interest rate sensitive, which is a hedge against inflation. Okay? So like I said, contact me to protect yourself because nobody knows how long this is going to last. That's the bottom line. That's the facts. Stay tuned to the next segment because you're not going to miss this. I'm going to talk about the government spending and how this is going to impact us going forward. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're going to wrap this up today, and what I'm going to discuss now is the thing that probably frustrates me the most. And I started to bring it up at the beginning, and if you heard the first segment, you recognize how frustrated I was. I was actually at a loss for words for a bit. And that's not like me. If you've listened to the show for any period of time, I've usually got plenty to say. And again, I come from a position of being a long time. We're talking about decades now, decades and decades, of being a fiscally responsible person and wanting to see that with our government. In other words, here's what I want to see. I want them to treat our money like it was their money, not the other way around. Calvin Coolidge was famous for going around and turning off the lights at night in the White House, and he was famously frugal. And when somebody asked him why he did that, and he said, well, it's the people's house and the people's money, and they don't need to spend money on electricity unnecessarily. Now, that's a small thing. I get it. But that gives you an idea of his perspective and how far we've come from that. I'd like to see a little Calvin Coolidge in our representatives, instead of just thinking it's theirs to do with what they want, and they can redistribute, and they can take from who they want, give to who they want, tax us how they want, tell us how to live our lives, and everything else, right? They seem to really get off on that. They really seem to enjoy it, don't they? I don't like being told what to do. I think that's probably pretty obvious. You can suggest things, recommend things, educate me, which is how I want to be treated like an adult. Is that too much to ask? You know, when I work with clients and I work with people, that's how I like to treat them. In fact, I tell them, look, we're all big boys and girls here. I'm not going to pressure you or try to talk you into doing something or not. I'm going to educate you and let you make an intelligent decision. I'll answer any questions you have and help you in that way to make that decision. But I want you to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because I don't want to sell you on something, okay? And I think that's a big problem with the financial industry, by the way. I think a lot of advisors look at it as they're smarter than they're smarter than everybody else. They're smarter than the people they're meeting with, and you should just listen to them. So they're the oracle, they're the Dalai Lama or whatever, sitting on the mountaintop. I don't believe that. I believe people will make good decisions if they're given the facts, good and bad, the pluses and the minuses, and they'll figure out what's best for them if you just give them a little education and help them. And they'll help them come to their own conclusions. I like to empower people. That's the bottom line. And I have them learn a little bit. That's why I guess, I'm the heart of a teacher. That's why I do the radio show. A lot of education. If you notice, I get in trouble a lot of times. Hey, at the station, I say, hey, give out your number more often and things like that, because I get on a roll and I forget. While I thought of it, yourpersonalbank.com or toll free 866-268-4422. If you want more information, you'll reach me. Okay. A lot of people are surprised by that. But no, I'm really genuine. My genuine desire is to educate people and help them make better financial decisions for them. So I guess that's my life's work, and I've been doing it for over 20 years, right? So it's near and dear to my heart. So that's why it becomes so irritating and frustrating to me. It just really rips. I know I get more worked up about it than most, I guess. But I do know that this is something that needs to become important to the average American or the majority of Americans, or we're going to be paying a price that none of us who've lived in America we're living in a world we don't recognize. Okay, yes, can it happen here? Yes, it can. I mean, we saw it happen in Greece not that long ago, about a decade ago, right? They went through austerity measures, and economically, it was devastating. Okay. There's no reason it can't happen to us too. If we keep kicking this can down the road, just keep spending money like water without any real changes. And I don't expect any major changes right now, because I can't count on the current representatives of the Democratic Party to vote for anything that even resembles spending less money. In fact, they're constantly, most of them, constantly trying to spend more. So it's really, again, damage control. But when in this, I recognize our federal government's going to be spending more money, at least for the next year, while the Democrats have the majority of the House and the Senate and the presidency. I get it. But now it's just damage control. What's the least we can get out of this, right? We just got to get through this. It's like a game. It's like I love watching football, and the other team is running up the score on you and all that, and you just got to survive the first half, because halftime's coming, right? Midterms. And we'll be able to make a comeback, I believe. But when our own side, or I should say people that profess to be fiscally conservative, or that's a bad word. I think it's fiscally responsible. Profess to be fiscally responsible and are not. That's where it really, really rubs me the wrong way. And many people call those rhinos or moderate Republicans. But the Senate recently voted to continue funding the government through mid-February of 2022. And the Senate voted 69 to 28 in favor. That tells me we have 28 senators that are fiscally responsible. The last bill, the infrastructure bill, which, by the way, folks, most of it doesn't go to infrastructure as far as most people would define it. There's a lot of extra junk in it. It was similar. I think it was about 30 senators voted against it. It's like 68, 69 voted for it. So again, it's consistent. It was all the Democrats, all 50 of them voted for it. And we've got about 19 or 20 Republican rhinos, senators who are not fiscally responsible. And why do I say that? Well, for one thing, in the resolution for the funding, right, to continue the government open through the middle of February 2022, it includes $7 billion in new funding to support Afghan refugees. We're, as a country, if that doesn't raise the hair on the back of your neck, I can't help you. Because what we've gone through as a country the last couple of years with COVID, small business shutdowns, Afghanistan debacle, leaving the border wide open to pretty much anybody who, in essence, the rest of the world's emptying the rest of the world, allowing the rest of the world to empty their jails and let them just come in, whoever it is. And then you do want to give $7 billion to people who, it's not like it was our people or the people that helped us. That's been documented fact now. It was just the ones that managed to get on the planes and get out. And we've seen stuff, upwards of 95% of those people had nothing to do with our country or helping us in any way while we were in Afghanistan. They're just Afghanis who saw an opportunity to get on a plane and get the heck out of there. Now, do I blame those individual people? No. Heck, if I had the opportunity, I'd probably do the same thing. You would too. To come to America? Are you kidding me? And they're going to fly you here? And now they're going to give you money and help you settle and everything else? Are you kidding me? But why in the world would we pay for that? Why would we agree to that? Why would 20 roughly Republicans supposedly agree to that? I can't figure that out until I started thinking about it. And by the way, this is to keep government open. Well, to agree to all that stuff, and by the way, there was a effort by some of them to try to stop funding over the federal vaccine mandate, which has been shot down by a bunch of the courts already. No, they weren't going to allow funding for the agencies, OSHA, to enforce the mandate that the courts have already shut down and basically said is unconstitutional. They're going through the system, but that's basically injunctions and everything has already happened. We couldn't even get most of the Republicans to agree to not fund that, which tells me they're not that against the vaccine mandate after all, are they? They're willing to fund it.
When you think about even before Carter, we had
it's infuriating, folks. It's just flat out infuriating. And this is the COVID mandate. This is the vaccine mandate where it forces companies 100 or more employees to ensure their employees are vaccinated, or basically they're going to lose their jobs, right? So we couldn't even get a majority of the Republicans to agree to that. And Mitch McConnell, the leader, he even said, don't worry, we're not going to let the government shut down. Well, the only kind of person that's concerned about the government not shutting down is a person that believes that the government is all important, right? And when you look at a career politician, and see, here's the crux of the problem: career politicians and career bureaucrats. You know what? If your entire life, basically your entire career, is wrapped up around government, that's where you've made your mark. You've made all your contacts. You've made all your money. Okay, that's your livelihood. Most of you know what I'm talking about. Think about your career or your business or whatever it was you did to make your livelihood or are doing for your livelihood. It's, for a lot of people, it's an important part of your life. Maybe not the most important, but it's right up there, right? It's in the top 3 or 4. Okay. In other words, you invest a lot of time and energy, and a big part of your who you are as a person. A lot of people identify by, what's one of the number one ways we meet a new person? What do you do for a living, right? Especially guys, right? That's people identify about what they are, what they do. And, I work for government, okay? Or I've been in the government, or I'm a representative, or I'm a whatever. And they've worked, many of them worked their way up the ladder, so to speak. But Yeah, it's important to them because it's all many of them, it's all they know. They've been in government for literally decades in many cases. And that's the problem. Until we replace the people, the career bureaucrats, and the career politicians with people that don't identify as that, as government being the most important things in their lives, we're going to continue to get more of the same. They're just going to keep spending more money, our money. They're going to continue to print more money, causing more and more inflation over the long term. There's not going to be any fiscal responsibility. They're not going to care because that's where they gain their power. That's what's important to them. It's their livelihood. It's their life, right? Term limits, folks, is the solution. My suggestion to you, this next election cycle that comes up, is stop looking at whether there's an R or D in front of the name. Because, 70 senators voted for this extension after a couple months ago them saying they weren't going to do it. So that's the other part. It's really infuriating. Chuck Schumer said, we're going to extend it until December, but that's it. We're not going to extend it again. And here we are a couple months later, extending it again. And got nothing for it. They got nothing. $7 billion is going to Afghan refugees. Some of them who probably hate our country, frankly. Anyway, my point is simple. Look at them, get to know who they are as they are as a person, the belief system, and is government important to them? Is fiscal responsibility important to them? That's the only way we're going to change this. Otherwise, they're just going to run us into the ground, folks, financially. And we've got to do it before the general elections, because one of the things I've learned recently about the Republican Party is they pretty much stay neutral until when there's primaries, they just let them fight it out, and then whoever wins the primary is who they back. Well, folks, oftentimes that's the establishment candidate, or the rhino, as many people call it. And that's why we get stuck with so many of these rhinos, and then the Republican Party supports whoever wins the primary. If you get somebody who's fiscally responsible, the Republican Party will support them. So get involved in the primaries. Help support a candidate who supports fiscal responsibility. Contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com for more information on how you can protect your money and thrive through this uncertainty as we go forward.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.